Hi guys, welcome to Python. This is going to be our second lesson. My name is Anuya,
I'm Marlise.
and we are the Seattle Seahawks. So the first thing that today we're going to learn about is print statements. Print statements you're basically going to use in any kind of program or code that you write because this is how you get your code to send output to your computer, and this is how your computer will like print something. So for example, on the right you see print, and then in the quotations that makes it a string, you say hello world, and then this is what your computer will say. It'll just say it back to you. So a print statement can also print variables. So if you look at the second example, I made an int variable because it's a number, so num equals 5, and a string variable because it's a word equals dogs. Here you can also use a print statement to print both a print statement like this hello world and also both of these variables num and word. So here I say print there are num 5 word dogs. So there are 5 dogs is what the computer will print back to you. And to put variables and strings, you use commas. However, if it's all strings, you can just use pluses instead of these commas here.
The next one we're going to look at is input statements. So input statements allow the user to type in their answer to any type of question or other information that we request from them. So in the example that we have age, and then beforehand we put input. So what that's going to do is that on the output statement, it's going to ask the user, what is your age? And the user answer will be put into the variable, which is the age portion of it. So a variable is a storage location that could be changed and accessed anytime. So what that's going to do, as previously said, is that we're at our print statement, we're going to type print your age is, and then separated by a comma, we're going to put the variable, which is age, which is controlled by whatever the user inputs. The next one we have is importing random. So if we are able to import other modules. For example, we can input math, calculator, and random. There's basically like a preset list that Python offers to utilize in different types of code. The one we're going to be focusing on today is random. So random is used to like generate a random value, whether it be from a list or a certain type of range. In the example we have here, we have a list which has strings inside of it, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in the next one for our print statement, we use random.choices, which allows the computer to choose the choices. And we tell them what list we have and then how many to choose from. But importantly, we need to do import at the top of the code so we can import that module.
Finally, the last main concept we're going to learn today are if statements. So basically, if statements are conditional statements you can use in your code. And then through this conditional statements, you can perform different things for different decisions. So here in if statement, you can, if you say like x is greater than 5 or like num is greater than 5, it will only do these statements that are underneath it if the num is greater than 5. So it is this block of code for this specified condition is true. If statements, through if statements, you can also use else if or else, and these are other statements you can write if your if statement is false. So else if your if statement is false, it goes straight, the next one it goes to is your else if, and then in the same thing where you write a condition and you write a block of code, and then that will test that. And then finally, else statements, you don't need to write any condition here because this is just gonna return this part, these statements, if either of these are just incorrect. Finally, today our activity is going to be our second lab, which is the barista lab. So our goal in this lab is to print a statement that states what size, temperature, and type of coffee that a customer wants. So the way that you do this is to do these 3 different tasks. So the first task would be to get user input for size, and then use an if statement to find what each user input means for the type of size. The second one is to get user input for bean type. And the final one would be to get user input for temperature and use an if statement to find out if that temperature is hot or cold. And then here would be your result, which is what you want your computer to print at the end. And this is an example. So you would want a small, which comes from your size, hot, temperature, Sumatra, bean, coffee. You want a small, hot Sumatra coffee. And now we're going to show you how to write the code.
So we're back. So just like last week, we learned how to open new directories and new files. So in this one, this is our brand new file. So at the top, we're going to use our little hashtag and just do lab2 so we know what we're talking about. And then we're going to start with the size in the beginning. So for size, we're going to do a variable, just like we saw before. So size is going to be the variable, and we're going to make this an input statement, meaning that we're going to allow the user to type in whatever answer that they want. So for this one, our first question is going to be, what size coffee do you want? And just because we want to like specify more or less what we're looking for, we're going to type in parentheses, small, medium, and large. We're going to do a question mark. So this right here is when it prints into the output statement, it's going to allow the user to type in whatever they are looking for. Apologies. And then because we want to know what we're getting, we are going to do a size to output variable. So this is just going to print whatever size that we are looking for in the end. So size to output, and we're going to put it with quotation marks right there. So this is where we start our if statements. So we're going to do it as an if statement is if, size, and then because we want it to be case sensitive, we're going to type in lower. And then we're going to put our parentheses, and we're going to do two double equal signs. So what that's going to do is that it's just going to allow the computer to recognize any variable that they put in as a lowercase s. So if they were typing an uppercase s, it would still go out the same. So then we're going to put size to output. And we're just going to write the word small. Okay. The next statement that we're going to do is that we're going to do the else statement, the elif statement. So that's just in case that the user wants to choose another size, like medium. So we're going to do the size dot lower, and then we're going to do a two equal signs, and we're just going to do an M, and then our size to output. Equals medium. And because we also gave them the option of large, we could do two elif statements. So it's going to be another size dot lower parentheses double, and then we're going to do an L, and then we're going to do a size to output, which is this variable, which we can click on. And we'll just do, in the parentheses, large. Now, because we also want to implement an else statement, we're also going to do one of those as well. So we're just going to type in else, and then this is just in case that the user does not type in either small, medium, or large. So as our else statement, we're going to put size to output as equals tall. So that would just be the default in case they do not answer it as an S, M, or L. And then the next section we're going to work on is that we're going to do the beans. So this is going to do another input statement where we're going to allow the user to input. And then we're just going to simply ask them, what type of beans? Type of beans / blends. Would you like? And that gives them the opportunity to type in anything that they are thinking of.
Okay, so for the next part, we are going to get the user temperature and then ask them and then figure out if it's hot or cold. So the first part of that would be another input statement. So you would do temp equals input. What temperature would you like? And then to make it easier on the users so they know what numbers to put in, you can put in parentheses 0 to to, let's do 100. So then but this is going to end up being a number. So that's where you would have to, instead of keeping it just as an input, you would change the whole thing to being an int. This allows the user to put in a number and for the computer to understand that it is a number and not just an int. So now when we write our if statement, if temperature is, and then you can say greater than, and because the computer understands that it's a number, it will be able to compare it to other numbers. So let's say if temperature is greater than 50, then you can say, oh, we forgot to write temp to output. So they're here under this if statement, if temperature is greater than 50, you can say temp to output equals, and then it can be hot. We could just use an else statement because if temperature is less than 50, that accounts for every other number there is. So you could write temp to output equals cold. Okay, so another option is to make the computer choose a temperature instead. And in doing that, this temperature would not be our main input statement. Instead, our main input statement could be choice or input. Would you like a random temperature? And then in that case, the computer would be able to choose a temperature and the user wouldn't be able to. And then here we could specify y/n to see which one the user would want to do. So here again, you would use an if statement. So if choice equals y equals y. You have to use equals in if statements because that's how you can check the number. Equals y. And then you could do, and then this part is when you would get the computer choice. So the way you do that is you use random. So every time you use random, you have to make sure at the top of your code over here, you write import random. So here again, we would go write import random. Like this would be an example. You would say if choice equals if choice equals y, then temperature equals, and then you would do random dot, let's do range, and then it chooses a random number between the range of, and then here above, we did 0 to 100. So again, you could do 0 to 100. And then here, and then the last number you would write is 1, and that's your step. So every time random looks for a number, it's going by 1. But if the user says no, then you have to write an elif statement. So elif choice equals n, then you would go back to what you did before. So you would take this statement and you would write it right here. And finally, else, if the user did not write y or n for a random temperature, you can just assign them a random temperature. So we'll say temp equals, let's say 90, and that would be a temperature that they get if they didn't put the right input. So that's all that you have to do to get your size, beans, and temperature, and now you would just have to print it out. So when you write a print statement, you can use quotations to write your strings, but when you want to put in your variables, you use commas and plus signs. You ordered A, and then you would do comma the size. So here your size to output, so you write size to output, and then you would do, you want your temp to output because that tells you if it's hot or cold. So temp to output, and then finally you want your beans. And we didn't change anything about beans, so we can just write it as beans. And then you can specify at the end, you ordered a blah, 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 coffee. So right after we finish the print statement, one thing that you may notice is that here you're finding the temperature, but over here is your temp to output. So that means this temp to output and this temperature right here is not calling the variable because it's after you write it afterwards. So you'd have to take this block of code and you'd have to put it above this part So now this variable here where you say temp is greater than 50 will be able to understand what temp you're calling. And now we can print out the statement and see how it runs. So here it asks, what size coffee do you want? And you can write small. What size, what kind of beans? We'll say Sumatra. And would you like a random temperature? Let's say no. And then because you said no here, it goes to this next input statement. What temperature would you like it? Let's say 55. And then it tells you what you ordered. You ordered a small, which is correct, hot, it's greater than 50, Sumatra, which is your beans coffee. And we could even run it again and see how it works if the computer does it. So let's choose a medium this time. What type of beans would you like? We can just say black coffee. Would you like a random temperature? And here you would write yes. And the computer chooses one for you. And whatever number they chose was greater than 50. So you ordered a small, hot black coffee. And that's basically how you do this entire lesson. So
thank you guys for joining us today. We hope you guys enjoyed it.